皆さん、
Ladies and gentlemen, are you enjoying Ascension program? We are now having today's special session between Minister Audrey Tang of Taiwan and Mayor of Fukuoka, Soichiro Takashima. Special dialogue between the two, and we look forward to a very passionate session ascending to the next level of society. Minister Tan, thank you very much. It is very nice to see you for the first time today.
我是副干事長。
Hello. Very nice seeing you.
どうぞよろしくお願いします。
Thank you very much. Minister Tan, you have never been to Fukuoka yourself, not once. Is it true?
I have not been physically, but my office, the Social Innovation Lab, when we were planning it 3 years ago, we learned from the Fukuoka Growth Next because David of Eno brought the ideas from your city about putting the, I think it's Daimyo Primary School, something like that, into a startup cluster so that each room, which used to be the primary school classrooms, could be the offices or co-working spaces. And because at the time we're looking at the Air Force headquarters that was in very bad condition and unused for quite some time, we did turn that into my office and also the Social Innovation Lab, learning from the Fukuoka experience. So while I haven't been physically in that particular startup cluster, I'm living in a derivative, a offspring of that cluster, if you will.
わかりました。
Thank you. So you have not physically been here, so just let me show you around virtually. These are the pictures of Fukuoka, and this is the center of Fukuoka, and this one. You see, we both have beaches and beautiful mountains as well, and it is also close to Taiwan, and we have beautiful mountains and seasonal beauty, rich in nature with cherry blossoms as well. And Fukuoka is renowned for its gorgeous food, be it sushi or oysters. We also are renowned for ramen, pork-based, or other hot pots as well. So you should really physically be here at least once.
Okay, as soon as I get a vaccine, I'm coming over.
Now, I have a range of questions that I want to ask you today, but under the pandemic, we are now seeing the spikes in new infection cases. What is the situation in Taiwan today in terms of the new coronavirus?
Yeah, it's been more than 230 days now with no local transmissions. And we've had, of course, daily reported cases for people who come into Taiwan and in quarantine for 14 days. And today, the border quarantine reported 14 people that detected to have COVID at the quarantined border. So while domestically we are very safe and have been very safe for more than 200 days, we're still on a pretty vigilant guard until the vaccine is made available. But otherwise, life is pretty normal. Masks is becoming a fashion item. I have an entire box of pink medical masks here, and people also wear rainbow medical masks as well, because we just had a Pride parade and in Taipei, but the Kaohsiung one is also coming this weekend.
So Taiwan has been quite successful containing the new coronavirus. Which measure has worked most successful? Is it really the border control, or is it more like a literacy or the vigilance at individual level? Can you share with us the effective measures that you have successfully taken?
Yeah, well, I think the most important measure is the idea that one wears a mask to protect myself from my own unwashed hand. If you connect hand washing and mask use together, then these two together is like a physical vaccine. When 3/4 of population get into the habit of wearing a mask to protect themselves against their own unwashed hands, it's an idea was spreading. They can remind each other. I get reminded more than once by my fellow citizens saying, "Minister, why are you not wearing a mask to protect yourself?" Now, imagine if we have said, wear a mask to protect other people, or wear a mask to protect the elderly. Then it's harder to say, "Minister, why are you not respecting me?" Very difficult to say. But "Minister, why are you not wearing a mask to protect yourself?" Easier to say. So I think I would attribute it into the prevalent mask use and the hand sanitation habits. But otherwise, of course, border control, as well as making sure that people understand the epidemiology. That is also very important, for this is not just the pandemic of the body, but also infodemic, like disinformation, conspiracy theory of the mind as well. And for that, we also need to be vigilant.
なるほど。今、その新型コロナウイルスっていうものは、
So the new coronavirus can be captured from two different vantage points, if you will. Say, for example, the COVID-19 for the younger generation and that for older generation may be different. For older generation, this is such a high-risk disease. And for younger generation, they have a lower risk of or they tend to believe that the risk is lower for younger generation. So the same virus can be interpreted in a very different way. And also, higher generation people, older generation tends to obtain information via TV, and that can be really infodemic, or maybe can inflammate. But younger generation can be more literate in terms of obtaining information. But in Taiwan, in terms of the risk perception of the COVID-19, is there any generational gap in terms of the risk analysis, or those netizens and also those with lower exposure to internet, will they perceive the same disease differently?
Yes, I think that is because the intergeneration gap, as you frame it, is less of an issue, because also thinking to Japanese technology, regardless of generation, Taiwanese people are on the platform called the Line platform. And on the Line platform, there is this very well-followed account that shows exactly how the immunology works. And if I, for example, click where can I find some masks, then it very quickly makes sure that I can both see the map for the mask procurement, but if I'm able to pre-order online, I can also order online, not only for myself, but also potentially it shows how to do so for my family as well. And so because of this Line platform, which was developed in Japan following an earthquake, this connects the generations together in the cute dogs and cute cats and other memes as well. That makes the idea was spread through this common platform. And this is very interesting because Line makes it possible for somebody who are standing in line, queuing in a pharmacy. So here is literally all the pharmacies near me, and it shows in real time how many masks of adult and how many masks of children are there. So I don't have to queue unnecessarily. And when people queuing me, like in the front of me, swipe their national card and buy some mask, I can check my line and actually see the system in action in real time. So everybody trusts each other more, and they then trust the pharmacist more. And then the pharmacist can show them how to properly protect themselves, not just masks, but also hand sanitation.
So personal information or personal ID cards. In Japan, we do have this My Number card system, but what is the ID system being used? And when you buy things, how do you identify the individuals?
Yes, we use the National Health Insurance Card, which is a IC card, just like the My Number, but it is not for electronic signature. It is just for identification. So the National Health Card is used by more than 99.99% of not just citizens, but also residents, including immigrant workers and so on. And because it is a single payer obligatory insurance system, we made sure that anyone who have that card can get their migration, whether they are adult or a child. People as young as 5 days after they were born get a national health IC card. So it really is everybody. And also by law, just like in my number, this card can only be used for public service. It cannot be used for things like advertisement or e-commerce or any other purposes. So people trust the use of that card more because they know they will not be targeted by advertisers or things like that.
I see. And yes, the My Number card, no ads. It's only to be used for personal identification. However, people say they don't want the government to know about myself. There is this rejection, and not many people actually have this card. But how did you, in Taiwan, succeed in getting the personal information into the card, or have many people hold the card without being rejected? How did you succeed?
Yeah, back in 2003, when SARS 1.0 came to Taiwan, it killed many people, 73 people. We had to lock down, to barricade an entire hospital without announcement. It was very chaotic. The municipal government in 2003 was saying very different things from the central government. But the small island of Penghu, of the Pescador Island, also very beautiful island, suffers less from SARS 1.0 because they already have the IC card, because the National Health Insurance card, while in the main Taiwan island, it's still paper-based. We were already starting a pilot test case on the smaller Penghu Island for the IC card. And the contrast is very clear. If you have a IC card, it makes it much more easy to do not only contact tracing, but also to dispense, for example, the rationing of masks and reduce stockpiling and panic buy. So a year after SARS in 2004, not only did our constitutional court ruled that the parliament need to set up new laws to set up a central epidemic command center so that we don't have to go to lockdown again when SARS 2.0 came. But also, we made sure that a national IC card for the health insurance is used not only on Penghu, but also everywhere else in Taiwan. Now, fast forward another 16 years, and then we get the yearly drills going on. So when we hear from Wuhan, Dr. Li Wenliang's post, the SARS has happened again, we all started to get the drills going the first day of 2020, the first day of January. So this early response is also very important because everybody above 30 years old remember how bad it was in SARS 1.0.
So then, for example, using ICT and also gathering data, in Taiwan, I understand that with the new coronavirus as well, you were able to get all the citizens on board. Everybody felt safe in using it, and also the government was able to carry measures out. But when you try to do these things, smartphones, maybe elderly people can't use smartphones or they don't like to use apps. Did you have discussions about how to deal with the elderly people who don't have access to smartphones or apps?
The Taiwan elderly people use Line more than their sons and daughters. They are better users of the Line app. This is very special because in Taiwan, broadband is a human right. Anywhere in Taiwan, you can get 10 megabits per second, both ways, not just downloading, but also very reasonable uploading as well. And even on the top of Taiwan, the Yushan Mountain, you're still guaranteed to get that connection. Otherwise, it's my fault. And it's very affordable. It's just less than 2,000 yen per month for unlimited data connection through 4G. And because of that, a lot of elderly people connect to their family using video conference, unlimited video calls, and because they paid 1,800 yen a month, and this is all you can eat, right? So they use video conference and do live streaming and watch YouTube and so on all the time. And that really, really helped because every day at 2 p.m., our Central Epidemic Command Center broadcasted this live stream conference of the press that the press can ask anything and everything, and they always also respond to the hotline 1922. Anyone can call 1922 to feed in questions for the next day's 2 p.m. Video conference, and the elderly people can easily follow that on the Line platform through chatbots as well, and that really helps. But even for like really old people, like I'm talking about like my own grandmother, almost 90 years old, then if she has troubles using Line, then of course she has her neighboring convenience stores and neighboring pharmacies who can also relay the information to her. But in my own case, my grandma actually used Line very well. She is also very good in using virtual reality. But anyway, we make sure we have the community connectors to connect to the elderly.
So it seems that the information literacy and broadband use, ICT use of smartphones is really spread among all citizens. So then when you get information, for example, TV, newspapers, internet, and the social media using smartphones, which source do people rely on the most? Which do they trust the most?
Yes, of course, many of them rely on the people they trust, which is why it's so important to have first the community pharmacists and then later on the convenience stores all enrolling into this mask rationing business, because it's not just about rationing out masks, but also about sharing correct information as well. And when people queue in line, or when people go and ask for a convenience store staff to help them to operate a kiosk to order the mask, they can then reinforce the right information about physical distancing, about how to protect themselves, and so on, making sure that they remember how to properly wash their hand. Instead of just washing very quickly, they have to follow a certain song. There's a kind of limerick writing about how to wash one's hands properly, first on the inner and then the outer, and like very different postures and so on. And they can practice that as well by the pharmacist and when queuing in line in the convenience stores and so on. So the face-to-face interaction is augmented by the smartphone, but it's not taken away by the smartphone. If we use the smartphone to replace, to substitute for face-to-face or real in-person interaction, then this information looks as believable as true information. But if the true information is reinforced by the day-to-day interaction of trusted intermediaries like pharmacists, then the disinformation is much harder to spread.
なるほど。こういう新しい政策っていうのも含めて、タンさんが、すごく
New policies and new measures have been rolled out by Minister Tang. And looking at the Japanese situation, a layperson in an administrative system cannot really work very well because of the bureaucracy. Sometimes there are certain red tapes that interferes with laypersons or non-governmental people's things. But as a minister in charge of ICT, how did you really deal with Taiwanese politicians or bureaucrats? Are they open to new options, or were there any resistance on their part?
Well, I'm sure that you also successfully overcame not only the city council but bureaucracy when converting abandoned primary school schoolyards into startup clusters. So I'm sure that you also have some experience that I can learn from. But my point in career bureaucracy negotiation is based on the observation that they are all in this to help everyone, to help all the stakeholders. And so as a digital specialist, I can help the public servants. So when I become digital minister in 2016, I call myself the public servant of the public service. So I serve the people who serve the people, meaning that if I can help them to make their work less cumbersome, to save their time, by automating away some of the chores that they do, they can spend more time connecting to other people instead of to the machines. If I can help them set up the video conference norms so that they don't have to spend so much time traveling on high-speed rails and low-speed rails and so on, then of course that's more time for themselves and their community and their family. If I can help them to absorb the risk by saying it's all my fault, if a innovation fails, you can blame Audrey. Then they are much more innovative because they know their ideas can be implemented and they get a credit if it works, but I can absorb the blame if it doesn't work. There's many, many different small ways on how to operate within the bureaucracy, but I think it boils down to be more trustworthy by absorbing risk and saving people's time.
Minister Tang, so once you're in the government and using ICT technologies, have you been able to implement the way you visualize without any stresses, or have you seen any challenges rolling out what you have in your mind?
There's no challenges at all. Everybody just voluntarily collaborated. But this is a situation that's called assembling bias. Because you see, I don't give orders, I don't take orders. In my office is volunteers from all the 12 different ministries who want to post themselves as secondments to my office. In that sense, I'm just holding a space for the innovative public servants to try out new measures, to work out loud. But the people who don't want to work out loud or to practice in this new horizontal policy making, well, they don't have to send people to my office. So while in my office, there are, of course, people from the ministries of culture, of interior, of finance, of justice, of public diplomacy, and national communication, education, I can go on, but there was no one from the Ministry of Defense. The military never sent anyone. So I said I don't run into any challenges, but that's because maybe the challenging people, they would not send people to my office anyway, so I have no idea how the Ministry of Defense works.
Interesting. So younger generation with younger thoughts, updating the service, I think that is a great initiative. And diversity is another key word around the globe. And in Japan too, those decision makers often lacks younger generation or younger decision makers. But in Taiwan, I have an impression that there are many young decision makers. Am I true, or do you have any system to promote those young people into decision-making positions?
Definitely. We have this idea called a reverse mentor, a young person coming into the cabinet to lead the cabinet member who are older than this young reverse mentor. So usually it's the older people mentoring the young, but in the reverse mentorship, it's the young people mentoring the old. Back in 2014, when I was 33 years old, I was also a reverse mentor to a minister of the cabinet, Minister Jacqueline Tsai, and I helped her to set up the idea of making sure that people who cannot represent themselves through traditional unions or associations, for example, she wanted to know how can we get startup founders to register in Taiwan instead of in Cayman Islands. Now, there was no association for startup people who register at Cayman Island. There was no industry association for that sort of thing. And she also wants to improve the teleworking condition. Again, there's no union of teleworkers. So traditional representative politics does not work here because there's no associations or unions. Instead, we use the AI technology called Polis that everyone can just post their own experience and feelings and form ad hoc clusters. It's like an association, but it's not formal. And it's purely based on how resonating your idea is with each other. So using Polis, we solved issues like Uber and so on that pertains to emerging technologies on the platform. So that's my work as a young reverse mentor. Now, of course, I am old. I am 39 now. So I also rely on a new wave of younger reverse mentors to show new directions to me.
That is a wonderful system. Reverse mentoring system, I think, should be employed in Japan as well. Listening to younger people's opinion, that's not all. You see, decision makers should be listening to younger voices as well. But what has given birth to the reverse mentoring system in Taiwan? Has there been any trigger event? I think that this is a very wonderful initiative. Tell me how it came to take place.
Yeah, the system was initiated in 2014. And it is started by a bunch of largely undergrad and even some high school students who occupied the parliament for 3 weeks. It's called a sunflower movement. At the time, the MPs, the members of the parliament, were refusing to deliberate a trade deal with Beijing. And because of that, the people occupied their workplace to do their work to deliberate that trade deal. And so it's a demonstration, but it's not a protest only. It's a demonstration as in a demo. It shows that young people can deliberate the trade agreement with the help of 20 civil society organizations, as well as 500,000 people on the street and many more online. Together, the rough consensus is as good, if not better, than anything that a parliament can do. And we did agree on a set of consensus, which was then accepted by the head of the parliament. So the reverse mentorship system was designed and initiated then, right after the sunflower movement. And I think this can be implemented on the municipal level as well. And it is very exciting for young people. Our most active people doing citizens initiatives of this kind nowadays also online are around 16 years old. And so high school students, I think they are definitely the future. I'm seeing a tweet just right now on Twitter saying the person is called Ogasho, OGA_SHO, saying that listening to Mayor Takashima and Audrey Tang, if I have seen this level of excitement when I was in high school, she said, I might not have left Fukuoka. And so this is definitely a very positive sign that the younger people are very excited about this real-time interaction with high-level political decision makers on the municipal level too.
I see. That's really wonderful. And I think that that's really why, even in politics, Taiwan is able to take up new things and have it spread. I'm learning a lot. Thank you. Now, as we have these new ideas, we need to really implement them out in society, especially Fukuoka. We are a national strategy special zone for startups. And I do have something to show you, but In 11 countries, in 15 places around the world, we have MOUs, and also with this event, we have a lot of cross-border initiatives, cross-border events, and the startups creating new business models and new technologies. We want to roll them out in society. And in Japan's case, when we say deregulation, we have these struggles from the vested interest. It's very difficult to bring in new things into society. So what we do is we create these special zones, national strategy special zones, and if it works there, then it will be spread out nationwide. So Fukuoka was selected as one special zone, but when you have these new business models or new technologies which you want to introduce into society, and if you don't have regulations or laws that rules them, how do you try to implement them in society? What kind of system do you have in Taiwan?
I think our system, called the sandbox system, is legally called Innovation Acts. And we have many Innovation Acts. Right now, the Education Innovation Act has been sent to the Parliament for consideration. We already passed the FinTech Innovation Act, or Sandbox, a few years ago. There was also one for transportation. So for self-driving vehicles, no matter where it's flying or where it's in the sea or whether it's on the land or whether it's actually moving, morphing between many different forms, like a boat that converts into a car and things like that, it's all permitted in the self-driving vehicle Sandbox Acts. There's also the enabling Sandbox Acts to make sure that people can try out new medical devices, like software-defined medical devices as well, and that's also in the drafting stage. And there's also a general purpose sandbox that you can challenge any regulation, but not law, any regulation at any ministry, with only two exceptions. You cannot experiment on money laundering. You cannot experiment on making terrorism attacks. But other than those two, everything else is good, is fair game. So in that sense, the entire Taiwan is a strategic zone for things like this to try. And usually it's tried for half a year to maybe 1 year at most. And after that, the society do a collective decision whether it's a good idea or not. If it's not a good idea, we thank the investors to pay the tuition, so everybody learns a little bit. It's like lottery, but reversed. But if it works, then we will guarantee to make their idea into reality. And while the parliament or the city council need to work, of course, on the regulation, the early pioneer in the sandbox, if they get accepted, then they get the monopoly until such a regulation is made possible. After that, of course, regular competition becomes open again. So this is the incentive that you can have a time-limited monopoly if you show the society the vision of the future of the law as well.
That's really wonderful. It's a really good system, and maybe that will really create a lot of new innovations out in society. And also productivity, I believe, will really increase. I really envy the system in Taiwan. And also, it seems that the thinking about risks may be different. In Japan, everybody wants zero risk, even with coronavirus. If there is one problem, if there is 1% possibility of something bad happening, maybe it's good for 99 people out of 100, but it's bad for just one person, we can't do anything. So like autonomous driving. Well, then if we try that out, let's say we have it for 1 month. If there is one accident during that time, who's going to be responsible? So it's very difficult to have even a demonstration. But in Taiwan, what do people think about the risks during these trial period? How do you motivate people to really take on the risk?
if you are on the driver's seat or the co-pilot's seat, then one can understand the risk much better. If this is a really long car, a long bus, and you are in the very rear of the seat, you can't see where the driver is going, then of course you would want zero risk. This is not about particular culture or particular age group or particular ethnicity. I don't think it's about it. It's entirely based on how close you are to the driver's seat when doing innovation. So the entire point of autonomous driving sandbox is to invite as many people as possible. In my own office, the Social Innovation Lab that's modeled after your future next center, we made sure that the smaller self-driving vehicles can roam freely, like in the campus. So for a very long time, we hold mobility hackathon with very cute tricycles. And those tricycles, they are very slow. They're not faster than me running. So even if accidents happen, if it runs into a wall or something, it cannot hurt anyone. It's just very slow. But because it's so slow and it's open software and open hardware, students, elderly people, they all want to change it. So they propose many things, like instead of one eye, which makes it look like a cyclops, make it two eyes, which makes it look like a cute dog. And for it to learn to yield first to the elderly and let the elderly pass before it yields to the children. Because the original design came from Boston, where they care about children and don't care about the elderly. But in Taiwan, it's the other way around. So we need to make many co-creation workshops so everybody feel they are in the driver's seat in a low risk, but not zero risk open design. Only when people are feeling okay about this do we increase the speed limit a little bit more. So co-creation, participation by citizens, that is the most important thing.
I see. So small steps, small success, and then take it one step higher. Together with the citizens, I understand how you do it in Taiwan. Thank you. And I believe in all other sectors and subjects in Japan also, for example, online medical checkups. Maybe we can start a little bit, and we are starting in little baby steps. But when we try to do these things, the vested interests would object. So in Taiwan also, maybe it's not just for safety, but the vested interests, were there any objections? Were there any pressures on the politicians so that you can't implement it in society? Were there any negative movements against what we were trying to do? We have those things in Japan, but what about Taiwan?
Yeah, I think the vested interests are there because they used to solve an important problem in the society. They earned their place. Otherwise, they would not become a vested interest. But of course, situations change. For example, when I mentioned the 16-year-old, a young lady who posted a citizen initiative to ban the use of plastic straw on bubble tea and other drinks. That is a very new idea, but because of the memes, the internet image of a sea turtle choked on a plastic straw and so on, it get 5,000 signature very quickly. People saying we must ban plastic straw now. And we do collaboration meetings very regularly, every other week or so, to bring the stakeholders together, including the young visionaries like this young lady, and the vested interest like the producers of plastic straws and one-time use utensils, who are, of course, older, and they also have something to say. And so we regularly bring them together in the Social Innovation Lab and other places for collaboration meetings, live stream the meeting many times. People can all join online like we are doing now through live streaming. And so also hear what they have to say. And producer of those plastic straws and chopsticks and so on said during the collaboration meeting to this young lady that when he joined the industry, he was also quite young, but that was like 40 years ago. And at the time, Taiwan was hit by hepatitis B, a virus. And the virus transmits through eating together. And that is why he made his life's work to prevent the disease by making the one-time use chopsticks and straws and things like that. And so it was social entrepreneurship as well as socially responsible entrepreneurship. But nowadays, hepatitis B no longer a problem. We have cure for that as well. You can just pop a pill and the virus is gone. So it's a solved problem. So he is also looking for his next generation when they take over the factory. They are also looking into making more sustainable contributions. So we brainstorm together how to design biodegradable, recyclable, like my jacket here. This is made out of the coffee bean waste and recycled plastic bottles. And I think 12 bottles went into making of this fashion item. And so we can introduce such ideas to the producers, and then the vested interest will pivot. Not only startups can pivot, if you have a good enough sustainability value, existing vested interests can also pivot when they know that this very creative young lady who started a movement can also help advertise their new product line, which is biodegradable and more sustainable. And so bringing them together is the most important thing to do.
Interesting. But listening to your stories, those policymakers and people with vested interest, or establishment, if you will, and startups, I think that there is, within your ecosystem, I think that they are more border free, if you will, and they are talking to each other, which I thought was wonderful. But on the part of the government, listening to the voices and ideas of the private sector, is there any mechanism to better listen to the better ideas of the people in the private sector?
Yes, definitely. So I mentioned already Polis, which is at pol.is. It's also a social entrepreneur, Colin McGill from Seattle, and he invented the methods for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to pour ideas in, and then you get the rough consensus out because it shares the moderation work to everyone, and there is no reply button, so you cannot verbally attack someone. It's like a social media designed for pro-social, not anti-social conversations. So we use that very regularly. There's even the website polis.gov.tw, just like a ministry's top-level website domain name dedicated to that technology. And there's also face-to-face ways to do so as well. In my office in the Social Innovation Lab, every Wednesday, I meet 20 people or so on average who can all book my time. And when they talk to me, they must agree to be published either as a transcript or on YouTube as a video for everybody else to see. This is called radical transparency. So the private sector people who come to lobby me must lobby not only to me, but through the camera to everybody in the entire world. So people will always talk about sustainability, inclusion in their innovative proposals. Nobody wants to talk about something that's only good for them, but at the expense of future generation of other people, because that will look very bad on the YouTube broadcast. And so making sure that radical transparency is a precondition of lobbying, that also helps a lot.
So you're in charge of ICT as a minister, and you are employing all the measures available, implementing new ideas across your society, reflecting the voices of the people of Taiwan. But going forward, how do you best utilize ICTs or other emerging technologies? And what kind of society do you envision to create in terms of ascension to a new level?
Yeah, I think one part of it is what I call assistive collective intelligence, or ACI. People in some startup talk about AGI, right? Artificial General Intelligence, meaning that, I don't know, Terminator or Skynet, like a robot will achieve the singularity. That's one kind of ascension, not my kind of ascension. What I want instead of singularity is the plurality. That is to say, people of all the different cultures can talk and listen to one another more by making sure that the AI are here to assist the collective intelligence. So the competition between human and a machine is gone because this is about assisting the collective intelligence. The urbanism is always inclusive because the urban policy can reach more people who are too young to vote. Right, the 16-year-old young lady didn't have a vote, but she still started a movement. And also the prosperity must be shared across the globe, not just our corner of Earth, but the entire Earth, because the coronavirus have shown that we are really in the same spaceship together. If any place in the spaceship leaks, the entire spaceship falters. And that is also important to keep in mind.
So you were talking about collective intelligence to make a better place for the country or for the world, updating the world, bringing the world to a higher level, which I think is a wonderful vision. And I have learned a lot about successful cases in Taiwan as well. And Fukuoka and Taiwan are having a number of shared projects in terms of startups, for example. And Taipei and Fukuoka also have concluded an MOU. We have established our friendship already, and we look forward to further expanding it as well. And Goldface, for example, came from Taiwan, and there are a number of Taiwanese startups thriving in Fukuoka as well. And this too is the MOU between your economic institute. So innovation can be collaboratively promoted between Fukuoka and Taiwan. So that's why I think that this tie is quite promising. But do you have any idea between Japan and Taiwan, or Fukuoka and Taiwan specifically, as to what we can do together?
Definitely. As I shared when I was talking to the mayor of the Okinawa, I learned about the early earthquake warning system, flood warning system, by running into a typhoon when I was visiting Okinawa, and that was many years ago. But it's such a important reminder that both people in Japan and Taiwan, we are uniquely well prepared to get the idea of resilience in our society. Unlike other more continental countries, we don't have this fantasy that we can use technology to conquer the nature. We understand we cannot conquer earthquake or typhoons, but we don't let them conquer us either. We can build resilient structures, not just in our buildings, but also in our mind as well, making sure that when an emerging issue happens, people who are good at thinking out of the box, the entrepreneurs, can come up with novel ways of, for example, making sure that all the medical officers in Taiwan, regardless of their gender, wore pink medical mask as a gesture so that young boys are more willing to wear pink medical mask to school. And that is a wonderful social innovation that easily spreads. And so I think such good ideas can be exchanged through this kind of conversation that we are now having, and making sure that a good idea spreads first, and then we can visit each other more. And I look forward to, of course, enjoy the very delicious food that I saw on your PowerPoint. And you're, of course, also welcome to visit Taiwan and have some good food here as well.
Din Tai Fung.
Yes.
That's Tin Tai Fung. Yes, it's really delicious. Whenever I visit, I always go there. And also in Fukuoka, we have a lot of delicious food. I do hope that you can come once COVID-19 settles down. Well, thank you very much today.
Thank you. Live long and prosper. Bye.
Thank you very much. And we have heard about how we can ascend to the next stage. It was really an enthusiastic, wonderful stage. Thank you very much, Minister Tang and Mayor Takashima.